Well, here we are with another speed run, and we've just broken through to the other side, 2,300, and we're playing against someone a bit lower rated from Morocco, and we're going to try to see what kind of mistakes our opponent might make and the things you need to do just to get better. So in this time limit, I can discuss the game a lot more, and the whole point is I'm going to discuss what I'm thinking so you can get inside the mind of a Grandmaster. Now please do like this video and subscribe. There's many more in this series if this is a bit high rated for you. So we're going to start off with the French defense, which was basically my first love in chess. My dad taught me this opening, and my dad picked this up after I think Botvinnik played it in a World Championship match against Mikhail Tal, where it piqued his interest. And there's two moves here. You get this very sturdy formation, but now you want to pressurize the center, and the more modern way is playing knight f6, which is the classical variation, but the old way is this bishop b4 move, which is the winner-ware variation. My opponent now moves his bishop to d3, and this is not a main line, but it's quite a trendy line. Now there are probably a number of moves here. I could bring my knight out, but that allows him to gain a tempo. But whenever you play an opening, you need to know your main concepts, and a main concept in these kind of positions is always to play c5. I mean, I might end up with an isolated pawn, but this move is the move that's tempting me the most now. Let's play it. Again, as you probably guessed from some of my videos, I can't remember everything. It's funny how, people, whenever I say I forget something, they're like, you're a Grandmaster, how can you forget? Or you've done a DVD on course on this, how can you forget? It's like, well, don't you forget stuff as well? I'm not superhuman because I'm a Grandmaster. I forget stuff as well. I understand chess well, but my brain ain't perfect by any means. So my opponent's now come with a little check, and I'm happy to see that, because there is a rule saying you shouldn't move the same piece twice in an opening because you lose tempo. And I don't see any problem with putting my knight behind the pawn in this very standard fashion. This is where my knight wants to go anyway. And my opponent's now gone pawn takes pawn, but he's moving very quickly. And the first thing that I'm looking at is not taking this back because this one is dodgy, but what if I push forwards? Now, I guess he can go a3 is his idea, and then I can take that pawn. There's one idea. There's also ideas like queen coming over here, because I'm threatening to take his bishop there and maybe take the knight. And I'd be happy if he took my knight, because then I have a bishop a6 move potentially. He has knight here, so it's not too bad for him. So there's already a lot of interesting stuff going on here. And whenever you get out of theory or your opponent, you should take a bit more time, because it's really, you want to be in control of the game. You want to decide which direction you take the game. Not always the best moves. Sometimes moves that you're most comfortable with, as long as you get an okay position as well. So this move, we will have to play a3. Now I'm thinking of bring the queen over there then, but then I think he can take on d4 with a queen minimum. So here, I don't see any great move there. I might be missing something. I mean, I can take here, but it's not. It's probably but then there's a little trick. If he moves his knight, I do have a check. So then he has to take here, takes, and move his knight. And that way I get my pawn back. And I think that's better than queen here. The thing that puts him a queen here is he takes, I take, and then maybe something like knight e2, and he can castle. So I'm going to play this move. This is definitely the most critical move. And now I'm just going to simply take here. I don't see anything better than this. Queen here, have one final look at. Queen there, he can't take here because I take on b5. Maybe. That gets awfully complicated. Queen here, what if he takes, and then takes here? That's also very interesting. I can't see anything amazing there. He's got this one. So I'm just going to take here. And the point now is, because he's put this bishop on rather a silly square, I think he has to take my knight. And I'm always happy to get rid of this light square bishop when I play the French, because you put your pawns on light squares, you open yourself up to this diagonal, and he's blundered immediately. And this is something which you often should do in chess. You should never play for tricks. Well, he's got this one, I suppose. It's not the end of the world. Now I've got a very pleasant choice of taking here, or taking on b5 and taking the rook, but which one do we go for? Bishop takes, pawn takes. So he's going to get a little bit more play than I'd hoped. Bishop takes, pawn takes, take the rook seems critical. Well, I think we should always try the most critical line. I think we should take here. This is definitely the most critical line, and I think we should grab the material. I don't see any obvious way why not, because I've got these moves to defend c6. I've also got this check now, which is a little bit uncomfortable for him. Do I even put the bishop over here first? Because if I check, he has to go king here. Then I check here, knight here. Then I take. He has to take here. It looks really tricky for him. But I kind of like this move first. But can he then take here? No, because I check. So if I go here, I've also got rook d8 as an idea. Let's play this. They say the threat is stronger than the execution, so I'm keeping queen c3 check as a major threat. I know maybe that was a stronger move, but this way seems a little bit trickier, because now, for example, I don't know what he's going to do after rook d8. I also should consider bishop takes here. He has to play knight takes and then rook d8. Then he has to go bishop d2, and that's probably winning for me. But after rook here, what does he actually play? Because if he castles, then I take here. So what's he do after this move? Let's see. So bishop takes there was forcing, but this one, he's moving very quickly. What's he going to do against this move? He can't take with a knight, because I take his queen. If he takes to the queen, I'm going to take his knight, and I'm going to win more material. And in this position, I should be safely whole rook up. My knight can develop. I can castle still. This pawn can be defended easily, and my opponent resigns. So very quick game there. But sometimes, you know, it can be quite easy. You let your opponent make mistakes. You don't do anything stupid. You don't need to calculate that far ahead, even though as you progress you will need that skill. But around the 2000 range here, what were the big moments in this game? Well, first of all, know the opening. And I know my opponent after bishop d3 was probably expecting something else, because if you know a bit of... you don't need to know loads of opening theory. It's really overhyped opening theory. It's useful, but not at this grade boundary, really. You need to know good principles. And I know that the main move here is pawn takes pawn, but I don't want to play into a line that he knows very well. I know c5 is a sideline, but I also know it's a perfectly okay move, because it's very French defense. We attack the center. We want to move our knight out behind the pawn. Can't be bad. This is his first error, because he put his bishop here and he's moved it again. The bishop on this diagonal is much better, because if I castle, he's ready to attack here. In these lines, he's probably always going to have to give his bishop up for my knight. So doesn't sound good. He takes on c5. Number of tempting moves, but we decide to force the issue. If you can force the position into your favor, it's often better, because you give your opponent less possibilities, but not always. In some cases, you want to give your opponent the chance to make a mistake. This is how, again, top players beat lower rated players. They might have a position with a lot of forcing moves, but instead they play a good move because they see the potential in their opponent to make a mistake, and they allow their opponent to hang themselves. So that's a high level tactic you can use yourself, maybe, unless you're the low rate player. And now after a3, we keep it simple, and I think he should take on c6 now. This is a big blunder. He has to play b4, otherwise he's dropping a piece. And now I stick to the principle of you should always play the most principled move and the move that's going to cause your opponent the most trouble, unless there's a really easy way to simplify your shorter time. But the most testing move here is clearly this. He has to take, and I grab a rook instead of the bishop. My opponent now collapses very quickly. I think he should concentrate on getting castled here. This pawn seems very unwise to capture. Queen c3 might be good, but this is also clearly a good move because it keeps his king trapped, and I've got a rook pinning his knight. And already he's lost here, and I haven't done anything special. I've just played, you know, with confidence, and I've taken advantage of his mistakes. And after rook d8, I expect he is lost here, but his next move, again, he's moving without thinking, should I say, and this is the final error because he's going to be a whole rook down, and that was only 14 moves. But sometimes that's all you need, and he's a 2000 rated player. Like, subscribe, and I hope you learned something from that video.